Su Qing's novella Beauty on the Crossroad original text 8. A difference of thought 3 years later, Song Wenqing finally came to kiss her. It was an early summer evening, and the sun filled the room with orange light. My mother apologetically closed the floral curtains. Song Wenqing was wearing a bronze-colored silk gown, with the collar edged with thin strips of the same color, but the back of his neck was still scratched. Song Wenqing seemed to feel regretful and uneasy, touching her head, neck and clothes with her right hand from time to time. Collar. Others would look suspicious that he was looking for lice. But no, he was dressed neatly today, even on his feet a pair of Yuan Dracon cloth shoes, with a snow-white and clean sole. I don't know if he had ever stepped through the dust on the street, or if he had just reluctantly hailed a rickshaw when he stepped out of the gate. From my house, Mrs. Zhang. You are so lucky. The young ladies are all talented women and are extremely knowledgeable. He shook his landscape painting fan with his left hand and scratched his neck more vigorously with his right hand. The mother had no choice but to say casually, "What are you talking about? What's the use of having a girl? Even if you can read a few sentences, what does it matter?" He smiled and said, "A woman's family will always suffer some losses, that's true. But if you have a good daughter, you can find a good son-in-law. At that time, raising your old lady until 100 years later, isn't it the same as a son?" After finishing speaking, he himself felt that he was really good at speaking, and couldn't help but put one leg on the other's knee and slowly started shaking. His mother didn't answer, but took a thermos and poured some hot tea for him. He quickly put down one of his tied feet, bowed and said, I don't dare. Then he picked up the teacup, swallowed 2 sips of tea, and then coughed dryly and said, Today, our boss called. I came here to serve as a matchmaker for Xiao Kai. The young lady here is very knowledgeable," he stammered, and his mother's face turned red in panic. Sister Ben was beside him. The man who was reading a novel on the chair quickly stood up and walked straight into the bedroom. I was the only one who found it ridiculous, standing blankly in the corner of the room watching their awkward performance. My sister was already 18 years old at that time. Cheng was 2 years older than her, and they would both graduate from the high school section of the county middle school this summer. I am 2 years younger than my sister and can graduate from junior high school. My mother is already extremely worried about our sister's future studies in the second half of the year. She originally wanted to sell some of the dozens of acres of ancestral land, but she didn't dare because she didn't have a son. People were watching the issue of inheritance in the future with eager eyes. Now if she sells the land for her daughter to study, she won't mess with this group of people. Will the aspirants intervene? She also knew that according to the rules and regulations, daughters and sons had the same right to inherit, but she did not dare to do so because the property was passed down from the ancestors, and the ancestors had all passed away. Who knew whether they had refreshed their minds in the underworld? Why don't you come here to eat rice cooked by a girl? Yes, she can stop eating rice, but she can't force her ancestors to starve too. She doesn't dare. Although she insisted that her daughters should study and become independent, she did not dare to blatantly give them this meager income in accordance with the current law. She couldn't think of a proper solution. Maybe Song Wenqing's suggestion could help her a little at this moment, right? So she said slowly, Thank you for your kindness, sir, but our sister-in-law really wants to study. After graduation in the summer, she wants to go to Capital University. I don't know their Huang family's marriage is about now that it's done. Do you want to get married? Song Wenqing closed her eyes and comforted her with a smile. Don't worry, Mrs. Zhang. Our boss is a new school principal. He said that he would wait until Xiao Kai graduates from college before he wants to marry the mother-in-law of the family. But at this point, he suddenly opened his eyes and pointed at me as if he was very reluctant. Second miss, you'd better go inside and see your sister. When I heard that, I curled my lips and ignored him, meaning, my sister is hiding in the room. Why do you want me to see her? You are just a matchmaker. Why do you need to send me away? Okay, do you want to secretly negotiate any terms with my mother? After making up my mind, I puffed up my chest and stood tall in the corner. Song Wenqing saw that I didn't want to go in, so she had to smile and said to me, Second miss is really beautiful. As airy as a boy. No wonder our team has chosen you. Mrs. Zhang, I am here today on behalf of Second Miss. He's a matchmaker. Our boss originally wanted me to be the eldest lady, But Xiao Kai likes the second lady, so our boss can't resist him. Ah. My mother was completely surprised and didn't know what to do. She said to Wenai, "He didn't expect this. I thought Ermying and Master Huang are classmates, and they seem to have a good relationship. Why would your boss think of Xiao Mei?" Song Wenqing corrected her from the side. "It's not our boss. It's our Xiao Kai." After a pause, he explained apologetically, "Our boss values the eldest lady very much. He has seen her acting and said she is so virtuous. There are very few women in the world, but our little friend definitely said that the second young lady is good-looking." He used new-style words to describe it, saying that the second young lady is a horizontal one. I don't know what a horizontal one is, but he does. It's not a bad word. He said that the second lady is a horizontal faction. Yes, a horizontal faction. My mother stared at him blankly, as if confused. I was confused at first, but then I figured it out after thinking about it. Maybe Cheng meant lively, but he thought it was horrible. I couldn't help laughing when I thought of this, but I was embarrassed after all. So I turned around and ran into the bedroom. I saw my sister standing behind the door and listening. She would go in without warning. She was surprised and immediately blushed. I wonder if she is ashamed. Or is it a sign of sullenness? That night, I slept in bed over and over again and could no longer fall asleep. I heard that my mother and sister seemed to be silent, and I was too embarrassed to disturb them. For a long time, my mother thought that we were all fast asleep, so she gently lifted the curtain, lit a cigarette, and smoked. I heard her sigh softly. "Mom?" Mommy suddenly called her. She became panicked when she heard it, and hurriedly threw away the cigarette, but pretending to put down the tent and go to sleep, and said to me, "Why aren't you asleep? Xiaomei, don't make any noise. My sister will wake you up." I said, "No, Mom, don't pay attention to that old man next time. We won't allow him to come to our door." She was silent for a long time, then said, "It's a good intention for me to be a matchmaker for you. Besides, Cheng often comes to my house. No, I don't want to marry that kind of playboy." I shouted angrily. Unexpectedly, my mother is also a bit left-wing. She is a contradictory character who has evil thoughts but has to continue to do good things. Of course, it is not appropriate for me to use the words good and evil to distinguish her behavior and thoughts, but I have no choice but to explain her in this way. She was a pure and kind-hearted woman at the beginning, but her kindness has always made her endure hardships for many years. She couldn't help but have doubts. She felt that a person should use means and pay attention to utilitarianism, but in fact she couldn't do it. She often hated it. My father was ungrateful, therefore advocated that women should be independent and not be too loyal to their husbands. However, until his death, she probably did not serve him faithfully for a day. She was just mouthing angry words. "Dandy." "Yes, Cheng is a complete playboy," Mother said painfully. Then her tone immediately turned passionate. "But what about the poor children? They are willing to study hard, like your father. And then they become rich, but they just become like playboys, who like sex. Just like adults. Have we ever been a wife of misfortune?" I said, "But it's nothing but yes." Mother said even more excitedly, "Don't think that husband and wife are really one. And don't think that a man's success includes his wife's success as well. People in the world only know how to worship heroes, worshipping saints, who would sympathize with their wives who sacrificed everything for this hero or saint. Women are always unfortunate. Even the queen who was once the lord of the sixth palace could only live in the name of being a virtuous person. Do you want to watch the emperor's husband continue to be so shameless? This is an injustice in feudal society." I said, "What about now? Now is a capitalist society. And of course the issue of men and women still cannot be reasonably resolved." The mother laughed dumbly and said, "Do you think women under socialism will definitely be happy? It is said that all those Soviet women got all the rights to be people. They lost many of the unique rights to be women. Women are inseparable, open to the children. If I lose you now, I don't know how I will be able to live. Women are born to have children, and women have to suffer forever. Women are easy to get old, and women get older. Whether she is in a capitalist society or a socialist society, she will be left out and lose love." I objected. "But, Mom, marriage cannot be about youth and beauty." The mother glanced at her sister and saw that she was not moving at all. so she lowered her voice and sneered. You said that beauty is not a factor in marriage, so why don't the Huang family come to ask for your sister? I couldn't help feeling a little sad for my sister, but subconsciously I also felt happy. I still said, but a learned man will never judge a book by its appearance. It meant that Cheng has no knowledge, so his opinions cannot represent ordinary men. The mother shook her head and said, that's not necessarily true, is it? Once a bookworm becomes prominent, he will only covet the colorful women more than ordinary people. What does the husband's knowledge have to do with his wife? His knowledge is in his own belly. You can't dig it out and put it to use. It's still the money he keeps in his pocket, but you should take out some for you to use. I was very dissatisfied. It seemed that my mother was no longer the same as before tonight. After a long time, her excitement gradually calmed down, and she suddenly sighed and said, "Ah, what did I just say? I shouldn't say such things to you. You are too young. You won't understand. You don't need to understand. Oh, Xiao Mei, we should reconsider this matter. It's not for anything else. It's just because your family background is so bad and you two sisters are about to graduate. Your sister is a good person in both character and academics. Student, I don't want her to give up halfway." And before we finished speaking, we seemed to hear our sister turning around, and our mother hurriedly changed the subject and said, "Xiao Mei, don't you want to get up and urinate? Do you want me to light the lamp for you?" I said no. So my mother threw away the cigarette butts, put down the curtain and went to sleep. I didn't dare to speak again. I just opened my eyes and looked at the dark room, feeling infinite sadness and emptiness in my heart. After a long time, my mother opened the curtain again and looked at the floor, as if she was worried about whether the cigarette butt would burn. She seemed to think that I was not asleep yet, so she said to herself in a weak voice, "What if we get married? If you succeed, the Huang family will also promise to help you study and improve."
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.